then when you see the alternation of day and night, when you see the heavens filled with all the stars, millions and trillions of stars, when you see the earth with all of its rivers and paths, when you see the ocean with all of its waves, doesn't all of this automatically lead you to believe that there is a Sani', there is a creator who is all-knowing that brought all of this into existence?
Ah yes, the watchmaker analogy spiced with an appeal to beauty.
Beautiful.
This is a recipe of the ages that we responded to in the last episode. Indeed, this is my second response to Sheikh Haroon Kanja's appearance on One Path Network, which is a Muslim production studio based down under in Sydney, Australia. And while we're on the topic of down under, guess what?
So
in addition, right, to having nature on hard mode, you Aussies can now spend your didgeridoo dollars on Debunked, which has bloody ace explanatory value for minimum ontological cost. That's pretty gnarly, ain't it, Skippy? Seriously, I cannot conceive in any possible world of Oppie ever saying the word Skippy, but I'm sure you'll appreciate that I simply had to take the opportunity of announcing Debunk's availability to my Aussie family through an awful impression, let's be honest, an awful impression of arguably the greatest atheist philosopher of our time. Anyhow, back to One Path Network. Within the video I'm responding to, the description claims that a Muslim delivers the lesson of a lifetime to an atheist. And, as an atheist, I'm eager to heed this lesson. Let's get to it.
So in saying that, the first step you mentioned was look at yourself, and you can see through your complexity, through the amazement of your design, comprehensiveness of it,
That's right.
that surely this indicates something beyond you. And then when we observe the outside world, we can see something similar. It's preciseness of how the universe is structured and created and things like that.
Really, you're left with one or two possibilities.
No.
After seeing the complexity of the world around us, either all of this came out of nothing, or someone or something brought it into existence.
In the previous episode, we spoke about evolution by natural selection, and more specifically the fact that it explains precisely how complexity emerges naturally, without intelligent design. Now, in William Paley's time, we didn't know how complexity could emerge naturally, and so it's understandable why most found his argument compelling. When we look at our body and we don't know about natural selection, our intuition screams intelligent design, and it's for this reason, at least by my light, that very few recognise the flaws in Paley's argument until the publication of Charles Darwin's masterpiece, The Origin of Species. To indulge in a slight side note, my favourite example of someone who easily saw through the veil of intelligent design is Percy Bysshe Shelley, who in his essay titled A Refutation of Deism, which he published 46 years before The Origin of Species, said the following: "Why do we admit design in any machine of human contrivance? Simply because innumerable instances of machines having been contrived by human are present to our mind. We attribute these effects to human intelligence because we know beforehand that human intelligence is capable of producing them. Take away this knowledge and the grounds for our reasoning will be destroyed. Our entire ignorance, therefore, of the divine nature leaves this analogy defective in its most essential point of comparison." Add to this the fact that evolution by natural selection explains precisely how complexity emerges naturally, and we're left with a sheikh that's centuries behind. Complexity does not necessitate intelligent design. If Allah exists, it's abundantly obvious at this point that he used evolution as his vehicle of creation.
Really, you're left with one or two possibilities.
No.
After seeing the complexity of the world around us, either all of this came out of nothing, or someone or something brought it into existence.
While the Sheikh has referenced complexity, the argument he's given here more accurately relates to existence, and so we can put his rejection of evolution aside. He claims that the universe, from the earth to the heavens,
Earth with all of its rivers and paths, when you see the heavens filled with all the stars,
either 1, came out of nothing,
either all of this came out of nothing,
or 2, they were brought into existence by something else.
or someone or something brought it into existence.
But here's just one issue. The Earth and stars didn't come into existence from nothing, but rather pre-existing material. They obey the law of conservation of energy. However, the broader claim I take Kanj to be expressing here is that either the universe came into existence out of nothing, or the universe came into existence out of nothing by something or someone. And we can infer this from many of the other statements he's made within this interview, such as the following.
God is the causer of all creation. He caused it to come into existence. The whole universe with all its complexity and detail came into existence out of nothing.
Given this, the problem here, then, is that he's committing a black and white fallacy, which is otherwise known as a false dichotomy. He's presenting two options as if they are the only possibilities, when there's actually a rather obvious third option, that being that the universe has always existed. You know, just like how the Sheikh insists that Allah has always existed.
He has no beginning, he has no end, he has no resemblance in his creation.
After all, many of the most prominent historical and contemporary physicists favour eternal models of the universe. Now, to be fair, the Sheikh later provides a few arguments as to why the universe can't have existed forever, but we'll get to them as and when he brings them up.
Now, for a sane person, sincere human being, obviously, he'll opt for option 2. That someone or something brought this into existence.
Rational disagreement about such things as the nature of causation and time is a healthy thing, since we are, at least in subsections, sorely lacking empirical evidence and consequently completely out of our depth. Because of this, you'll find in the literature theists and atheists all over the place, some being convinced of causal finitism, some not. Some being convinced of a necessary being, some not. Some being convinced of the a-theory of time, some not, and so on. And perhaps more importantly, you'll see opposing philosophers treating one another with respect and dignity. But in a religious setting, this is sadly rarely practiced. The dogma and tribalism renders earnest intellectual disagreement on things we quite frankly have no business being confident on as blasphemy. The Sheikh, for instance, is here explicitly demonizing the other as ignorant, arrogant, and even insincere.
For a sane person, sincere human being,
which has and does lead to gross mistreatment. Ex-Muslims are one of the most mistreated minorities the world over, and it's partly because people like Kanj simply can't tolerate rational disagreement, and the reason he can't tolerate it is something we'll expand upon in the next episode.
I'll give you an example to clarify it a bit more. Imagine you had someone that had a typewriter, or let's say a wireless keyboard. This wireless keyboard, he took it up to a very tall building. He walked up the stairs all the way to the top. And when he got up there, the typewriter or the keyboard, he threw it down the stairs. So this keyboard started to tumble down slowly down the stairs. Obviously, on its way down, its keys would have been pressed many times. And then eventually reached the bottom of that building. When the man came down, he picked up this keyboard. He checked the screen that the wireless keyboard was connected to. To his surprise, he found that the keyboard had written up a whole volume of work, a whole story. Yes. By mere chance. If you were to tell someone that story, he will think that, you're with the fairies. True? Okay, maybe a word or two would have come together by mere chance. But a whole volume to be written up by mere chance of you throwing that keyboard down, very hard to believe. What's harder to believe? Is it harder to believe that the whole universe with all its complexity and detail came into existence out of nothing, or that keyboard, typing up a volume of work? Obviously, what's more complicated is the universe. And you find this type of rational dialogue was used by all the prophets and messengers.
I think we'd all agree that it's incredibly unlikely that a single wireless keyboard rolling down a finite number of stairs would produce a whole volume of coherent literature. And that because of this, we'd much sooner commit ourselves to an alternative hypothesis, for instance, that we're being pranked or that we're dreaming. Fair enough, I say, agreed. But what if we drop the wireless keyboard down the stairs an infinite number of times? Would it then be incredibly unlikely for one of the tumbles to produce a whole volume of coherent literature? No, it wouldn't. To the contrary, in fact, it would almost surely happen. There's a theorem that you probably already know of called the infinite monkey theorem, which states that a monkey hitting random keys on a typewriter for an infinite number of time will not only write the complete works of Shakespeare, but almost surely every possible finite text an infinite number of times. Now, if an event occurs an infinite number of times, which an eternal universe might well permit, then the probability of any possible outcome from the event turning up is almost surely. All possible outcomes have an infinite number of chances of being actualized. Thus, the Sheikh's analogy is a false one, since it consists of a single random roll, whereas an eternal universe might well consist of infinite random rolls, which renders even the most unlikely probabilities as to almost surely eventually turn up. So there's just one response. If the universe has existed forever, then the probability of any possible world turning up is almost surely. Our intuition struggles with this notion, but the mathematics is crystal clear. However, to quickly offer an alternative response, consider science. The explanatory value of science is derived from the fact that things are not random, but rather determined. We can infer that a domino caused another domino to fall due to the former resting on the latter. Likewise, we can explain the Earth's formation by referencing the phenomena of accretion. It's simply not random in the way that the Sheikh suggests.
Another important point that you find in the creation all around you is that it is always changing.
Yes.
Everything is nothing is ever the same. It's always changing. There was always change taking place.
Now, you might be anticipating, as I was, the Sheikh to present something along the lines of Thomas Aquinas' first way, which argues that everything in motion is put in motion by another, and that since God is not in motion, we have an unmoved mover. But this isn't quite what we get. Kanj continues by emphasizing just how many chemical reactions are happening within our body.
Not millions, not billions, trillions of chemical reactions taking place every single second in your body.
And he then claims that someone, not something, but someone, is both one, in control of these reactions, and two, has brought them into existence.
This also indicates that someone is in control of this change and has brought this change into existence.
Right.
Again, it's pointing you to a creator, a designer, the change that is witnessed all around you.
However, the Sheikh offers no justification for these extraordinary claims, and so we'd be well in our right to invoke Hitchin's razor. 10 minutes later, though, and in response to a different question, Kanj gives us a bit more to chew on.
That change means that someone has brought that change into existence, and also that change cannot be eternal. That's the rational way of thinking about it.
Is it to say that something that's eternal cannot change?
That's right.
Yeah.
If it were to change, that means that there's some sort of outer power that causes that change.
Well, here's just two responses. To assert from the observation that everything within the universe is changing, that therefore the universe itself is changing, is to commit a fallacy of composition. It's as fallacious as insisting that since everything within the universe is in time, therefore the universe itself is in time. Or that since everything within the universe is surrounded by space, therefore the universe itself is surrounded by space. And as a second response, Muslims believe, as do all followers of Abrahamic faith, that an eternal God has changed his mind on numerous things, such as wanting Abraham to sacrifice Isaac. But do you know what? I for one find no contradiction in an eternal God changing his mind, just as I see no contradiction in an eternal universe composed of material rearranging itself. And more relevantly, the Sheikh hasn't even attempted to illustrate such a contradiction in the latter.
In saying that, Sheikh, could someone say, well, that's just cause and effect. That's what that thing is meant to do, and that's what it's meant to lead to.
Beautiful. Cause and effect. But who caused that cause to begin with? Yeah, it has to have started somewhere, true? There has to be a point where it all started from.
As just seen, the Sheikh then asserts that infinite regress is impossible. That is, that there must have been an uncaused cause, which he identifies not only as intelligent, but specifically Allah.
God is the causer of all creation.
And in addition to claiming that Allah caused everything else to exist, Kanj insists that Allah is in control of all current causation.
He caused it to come into existence, and he perfectly, planned it all out. And there is not a single second that passes by except that God is still in control and causing that change to take place.
However, at this point, he offers no justification for these claims, instead immediately moving on to the alleged empirical evidence of the universe having a beginning.
Take the Big Bang, yes. The famous theory in our times.
Later in the conversation, though, and in response to different questions, he offers a few relevant arguments, but I'm going to address them in the next episode since they need a lot of unpacking.
So we're not saying there's no cause and effect. What we're saying is that if you accept cause and effect, then you have to keep saying, okay, what caused that, and you have to get to a point of origin.
Of course.
Okay.
Of course.
No.
Take the Big Bang,
yes.
The famous theory in our times, the Big Bang. Okay, but who brought the Big Bang into existence?
So if you would accept that theory...
It's not a final solution for you.
As I've stated ad nauseum on this channel, the Big Bang model does not state that the universe began to exist, and the fact that apologists continually and confidently state that it does is just embarrassing at this point. On this note, just over a week ago, a phenomenal documentary here on YouTube was published that features physicists and philosophers who have contributed to the prevailing model. And within, they make clear, once again, that
the Big Bang doesn't prove the universe had a beginning, only that it evolved from a very hot, dense state.
Indeed, the Big Bang is a moment in time that we're hopelessly ignorant of. It is not the beginning of everything except for God, no matter how many times apologists insist that it is.
So there's a lot of theories out there. There's the multi-universe theory, it's like 1,000,001 ideas that can come about in one's mind, and to try and sort of sideline this pressing fact that God does exist.
We spoke earlier of the religious having a tendency to demonize non-believers, and we're here witnessing it again. Kant claims that cosmological models such as the multiverse were created to sideline the existence of Allah.
To try and sort of sideline this pressing fact that God does exist.
But not only is this false, the multiverse is compatible with Islam. I hope it's really quite clear by now that when it comes to cosmology, the Sheikh is well and truly out of his depth, but speaks with frankly absurd confidence, a preacher's confidence. As I'll expand upon in detail in the next video, there's a pernicious reason as to why apologists wield such grotesque confidence.
If he rejects it, he's doomed.
So please be sure to subscribe should this be something you'd like to see. As always, thank you kindly for the view, and an extra special thank you to my wonderful patrons and YouTube members, whom without videos such as this simply wouldn't exist. Thank you. And finally, since I mentioned the legendary Shelley, I'm going to conclude by stitching a few of his wonderful thoughts with a remark of my own. The pride of theism bears every mark of a veil woven by philosophical conceit to hide the ignorance of theologians even from themselves. For all of our intellect, we still bear the indelible stamp of our lowly origin. We simply cannot accept that we are not the universe's crowning jewel.